But it was super fun, and like you had to be creative when it was happening at these punk shows in the basement, and it's like, and I like played the shit out of it. I was just like on fire, but it's just because you shed the worry of like being perfect. You're just like, well, it's gonna be all messed up anyway.
Hey folks, welcome back to Hitmakers. My name is Ryan, and this is my show, as you are no doubt aware. So we got something a little bit different for you today. I had somebody lined up who became ill at the last minute. We had to reschedule, so instead we are going to step back in time about a year and revisit our very first episode. I've got a whole hour of stuff that was left on the cutting room floor that at the time when we recorded it, I thought, like, oh, God, I'm so, like, my voice is so annoying to listen to. It's so bad. Is anybody going to like this? It's not usable. So anyway, I cut kind of what I thought was the least embarrassing bit because I had to put out something, right? We put this time in to recording the thing, and that's what was released as the first episode. There's a whole other hour of conversation with me and Mike, and I listened back to it. It's good. It's like an actual episode of the podcast. Now, you can tell that we're both kind of feeling our way around it, and I will take responsibility for that as the host. I didn't really know what I was doing, and so you can there's spots where you can hear us trying to find a rhythm. One thing that I noticed about this, when the mics are on, you feel like you've got to be talking all the time. Then when you listen back to it, you're like, why'd you say that? Or just let him talk. Or you can hear spots where his brain and mine are on different, we're not on the same page, and the conversation goes in different places. Anyway, it's kind of meta because we do get into that sort of self-criticism about particularly recording, which is what this is. It's also just kind of funny for me to listen to because I do tend to tell stories over and over again. This was recorded last year. The Glenn one was recorded last week. And I think there are a couple of stories that I tell on both of them. So at the time, I was also trying to figure out what the show was going to be. I didn't quite know. And the whole interview sat on my hard drive for a couple of months because I thought I needed somebody else to, edit it or get involved somehow in order to put it out. I discovered I could do it all myself, and it's fun. And the show doesn't have to be as drum lesson-y as I originally thought it did. There's a lot to be gained just from listening to people talk about their experiences. So in that spirit, let's check it out. Okay. I feel nervous about that. I have
Get some tea into you.
311 have never appealed to me. I tried. Actually, I liked that Down song, I'd say, when I was about 15, 16.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think that was the big song.
Yeah.
Down.
Yeah, Transistor was like when they started to lose me, and then every subsequent song.
Now, the more we talk about it, the more I'm realizing, like, I do actually know more about 311 than I'm letting on, even to myself. But I mean, I did like the drumming. I think
the drummer was good.
Yeah,
I did not like his snare tone.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was like time and place drumming. Like the time period was. That's what the snares sounded like then.
Sure, yeah. In those days. Especially if you had like a ska reggae kind of sound.
Yeah.
Yeah, I liked it for some people, like Real Big Fish.
I don't know them at all.
Oh
no.
They had kind of 2 albums.
Wait, were they like Celtic punk?
No, they were ska. Ska with like a good guitar player and funny video.
Yeah, ska is like one of those genres that like you immediately think, uh-oh. Like when somebody's like, yeah, I'm in a ska band, but it's often great.
No, now too. especially here too. Like I think you can do it authentic. There have been people who've done it authentically.
Yeah,
obviously that's where like the music comes from. But.
Yeah, but it is risky.
Oh yeah, I wouldn't do it. I couldn't pull it off.
You'd have to tune your snare up like crazy, so that would be annoying to deal with.
Well, also I don't know. It's the same reason that I have an issue with like Latin music or something. If you're learning Latin grooves on the drums, like I understand they're good for independence and everything. But to me, it's like I'm a white guy from PEI. What business do I have playing Latin?
Well, you're from
music?
an island.
Yeah, that's true. I am
It's
from
island
an
music. Yeah, I know what you mean. Like you can't. You feel a bit silly, I guess, trying to like nail it. It's almost like, well, I'm just gonna do what, I wasn't brought up with anything like worldly at all.
Yeah, totally.
So, like what I know is like St. John radio music or whatever. So I wasn't really exposed to anything like that. So I don't know. I've also never really felt like I should nail that kind of music.
No, I haven't either. Except when I was in school, it was like it's a thing that you have to learn if you're learning. If you're learning jazz, Latin grooves are a part of it,
right?
I guess historically, but then it becomes.
I mean, it definitely helps. Like,
sure,
it would totally help. In situations you can like apply it, but I would never, even if I studied it for years, I would probably never claim to be some kind of expert or like specialist or anything.
No,
like
I would say that it's never directly helped my playing, but I would say that indirectly it probably has.
Yeah.
Like, I can still play a bunch of those patterns, but I've never... Even if I was, like, I wouldn't feel right playing them even if I was doing a jazz gig.
Yeah. Right, yeah.
Like, I still would feel like no, it's my fake version of it,
right,
you know?
Yeah. Could you just do a jazz gig? Just get in there and sit in and... Like, all right, boys, on 3, or whatever.
Yeah, it depends who the band was.
Right.
Depends how
if it was like a 311 jazz cover band.
I could do that, yeah.
I actually, one time, my brother and I and our friend Chuck were hired to play at a restaurant, and like under the pretense that we were like a jazz trio, where we could like just quietly entertain people. And we actually played mostly 311 and Primus, but
that's so funny.
But really, really like mellow, and what we thought at the time was like jazzy. So it basically just brushes, and like there was no slapping and popping.
Yeah.
But
how'd it go over?
Well, you know what? It wouldn't have mattered. Like nobody pays attention anyway. So,
well, this is it. So you can kind of get away with it. Yeah. They also don't know if you're any good. The thing about jazz is.
Right.
Only other musicians know if you're like as long as you're good enough.
Yeah. I was listening to Sun Ra the other day, and I was thinking the same thing. Like, if most people walked into a bar and saw this or heard this happening, they would think like, what is this shit? Like these people are clowns. They don't know what they're doing with these instruments. Like. That's what most people would think.
Because it's so weird.
Yeah, it's so crazy. And it's like, but I think I think Sun Ra may be the best example of you got to know the rules before you can break them properly.
Sure. I'm not very familiar with his
it's crazy.
I know he's got a ton of records, and that's why I have put it on to check it out before, just like you find an album on YouTube, but I haven't consistently listened to any particular album. Yeah. So I just have like sort of a vague idea of... I know it's like science fiction-y kind of...
Yeah.
It's maybe not fiction in his
science fact
interpretation of it. Yeah.
It's super duper weird. But like some of it, I listen to because I genuinely like it. I don't really know the albums and stuff. I just like find something on Spotify and play it. And then some of it I sort of listen to out of like this sounds worse than I mean it, but like a chore, because it's like I should get this into my brain.
Yeah,
if
absolutely.
I want to open my, playing, these guys are masters at like opening their playing to a point where it doesn't really even sound like a song. So I mean, to maybe somehow like put a little bit of that in the mix a bit of that into the soil that's gonna grow.
Sure.
Like my song vegetables or whatever.
Yeah. I think that's can be the case with a lot of that kind of music though. Where it's like sometimes it's not about the listener, you know what I mean? Yeah. It's about sort of coming up with different possibilities, exploring different things. that you can do, and that can be. I think that can be extended to jamming in general. It can be very interesting for the person doing it.
Well, yeah, I think my brother said to me once, nobody enjoys jamming more than the people doing it.
Yeah, totally.
Anybody watching, like you can be sure that you're having way more fun than the people watching.
Yeah, totally. I remember reading an interview, whatever, it was a modern drummer interview with Stuart Copeland, but they just asked him kind of rapid fire his thoughts on a bunch of different things, and one of them was like, we think of extended jams, and he says, I hate them unless I'm the one doing them.
Yeah. I mean, which is fun too, because there's bands I love, like the Mars Volta or something is like famous for that.
Sure.
And often get called like self-indulgent, like dicks.
Honestly, like the first record I was into, and then from then on, it did kind of become too dense for me.
Well, they quickly,
at that time.
Yeah, they quickly got into, I don't know when that Francis the Mute album was, but there's a lot of jamming, and it's like,
yeah.
And like, I at the time I didn't like it. But I sort of ended up, now I like it a lot more.
Yeah.
Because I think now it's like I can see myself doing that and being like, oh fuck it, I'm just gonna jam here.
Sure.
Can I have some of that tea there too?
Oh yeah, of course.
Hand that right over.
So now, Michael, you also took a lesson with that drummer, didn't you?
Oh, I did. Yeah, I took a lesson.
Was he in the band at that time?
No, I took 2 lessons from 2 different Mars Volta drummers.
Really?
Yeah. It was I mean, if you want to hear a bit of that story, it's a pretty it's a pretty interesting one, I could say, I guess.
Yeah.
Not because I'm a great storyteller, but
I'd say it
was just it was like it was also a bit of a pilgrimage for me, like to like, it was my first, and as of right now, my only time in California. So I was going through and I was like, you know what? We have days off and I'm just going to really try to make the most of this. Like really, do some lessons, like learn what I can. And so I looked up, the first one I looked up was Thomas Pridgeon, who's...
Yeah, so he's the guy I'm thinking of.
Yeah. So you've probably seen him play on YouTube
and like
stuff.
the really craziness, right? When they to me, the Mars Volta had disappeared for a while, and then when they came back, it was just like...
Yeah.
And this drummer was...
Yeah, and there's a lot about that I like. Like, if that was my band, there's definitely a lot of things I would do differently, but it's
sure.
As far as things I can find to listen to, it's very close to... Or it's the closest thing I can find, really, to what I really want to do, but it's still... Like, saying that, it's still not that close. Mm-hmm. But I can't really find anything closer. But anyway, so...
Interesting.
Yeah, Thomas Pridgeon is like a insane drummer. Like, he's...
So this is what I remember, because it's like, he's one of those guys, you watch him and you're like, I can see what he's doing and I still have no idea what it is.
Yeah, exactly. It's like... And I think... Like, I've been thinking about this a lot. Like, about different drummers and, like, what... Like, the different qualities that drummers have and, like, what the different styles of drummer there can be and, like, what makes them a certain way and all this stuff. Like, I spend way more time thinking about that than about, like, drumming technique or anything like that. Mm-hmm. And anyway, so one thing I was really curious about with Thomas Pridgeon is he's, like, a super physical drummer. Like, he's crazy buff, like, super strong.
He is, yeah.
He's a drumming athlete. Like,
right, sure, yeah.
And... that's kind of how he made a name for himself, is just being so, like, technically and physically gifted that he can... And I think a lot of the stuff that he can dazzle people with is not necessarily, like, difficult concepts. It's like he can just do it so goddamn fast because his muscles have been trained. He's the youngest drummer in history ever to be fully sponsored. He was 7.
Really?
Yeah, he was professional at 7.
How does that happen?
Through church. Like, he grew up in church, which is a lot of those guys with insane chops, like the gospel drumming.
Absolutely, yeah.
So, yeah, but he won a Guitar Center, like, drum off or something.
Okay.
And then he got all this attention, and then, he had, like, full endorsements when he was 7, which is insane. Like, how do you even choose the best sticks? You're like, I don't know.
How do you even know?
I didn't...
Kid. My first sticks were, like, Cornet and... I don't know. I didn't know there were other companies.
Yeah, I mean, how do you even know what you Anyway, I don't know if he's still with him, but anyway, so I thought I knew it was gonna be in San Francisco, so I thought like, I really want to get a lesson with this guy because there's things. Actually, what my journey was was trying to figure out jazz or like trying to at least understand the first step, like because I've never really had lessons. I've never gone to school for music or I've never really been around jazz, but I really more and more like love it or I'm starting to love it.
Yeah,
and it's really the way I want to play. I think leans more heavily on jazz than anything else at this point, but I don't have the background of jazz, so it's a weird, like I'm trying to sort of come at it from the side door, like trying to like squeeze in without doing all the proper. I mean, I've done a ton of background work, but in other styles.
Yeah.
So
jazz it's kind of in a weird place anyway, culturally.
Yeah.
To me, I feel like, and what do I know about it? But I also feel
you did go to school.
I know,
so
but
you know
I did. But that's kind of the problem.
Right.
In that, like, I kind of feel like coming at it just because you're interested, and then you go and you learn about it, and like that's how you figure it out. Is a more honest or better way to do it than to
than just have to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I guess I can see that.
Or to treat it like purely an academic exercise. Like my one issue with it being institutionalized is that you just completely lose the social context, and there's things that just don't get passed on because it's like, well, this is you play this scale over this chord, okay, but
right. Yeah, I see what you mean. I guess like. Yeah, I mean, it's, I know from what I've seen in the movie Whiplash and stuff, like school can be pretty like regimented and like you just have to do this and like it doesn't matter if you want to.
Yeah, kind of, totally.
Yeah.
I mean, my own experience was that I went because it was an option, and it was like I only wanted to do music, and this was you do either jazz or classical, like those are your options. And so it's drum set or like percussion.
Yeah.
I chose a drum set. But it's totally removed from like there being a scene in some ways.
Yeah. Well, it's also where we live.
Yeah, it is.
I mean,
100%. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like it would be way different. Like these like hotshot New York drummers. Like I went and saw is it Dave Weiss? Dan Weiss? Dan Weiss.
Yeah.
I went to see him in Montreal recently. And that Mark Juliana I'm like really into. But those guys are from like Jazztown. Yeah. Where it's like a real thing. Like you
can go play every night of the week or watch it every night
I can be a jazz musician for a living. Yeah. Like that's a totally viable thing there. Yeah. But where we live, it's like not.
No, you can be a jazz musician a couple nights a week and then you got to figure it out the rest of the time. Yeah. And people do it.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. But it's like, I mean, especially, but I mean, focusing on jazz is even harder. I mean, you're even setting yourself up for more difficulty. Yeah. Because it's just not a popular genre, especially in a small place like this.
No, because most people don't understand it.
Mm-hmm. Oh, right. So, okay. So
anyway, sorry. Yeah.
Yeah. No. The prison thing. So basically, what I'm interested most in is the sort of freedom, like the improv playing that jazz is known for. Like, so
yeah, that's what it is.
Yeah, and although I know Thomas Pridgen is not a jazz drummer, what he does have is like this ability to like go wildly off course, and you think like there is no way. And I mean, this couldn't be more cliche, like what I'm about to say, but like you couldn't be more like it seems like there's no way that the drummer's gonna get back and like know where the song is and know where the next break is and something like that, and then like miraculously bang, they all hit together, and then the next part, like what like that to me is the biggest mystery that I'm trying to unlock. And like So with the Pridgeon thing, I knew that he was giving lessons. I'm like, and I know of him, and I'm sure there's lots of jazz drummers who would have been better to approach about that. But he was just the one on my radar at the time.
Whatever. I think it's like you got to follow what interests you.
Yeah, exactly, and it's gonna be fun. And I am interested. Though I'm not that kind of drummer that he is, and never will be. And I don't necessarily want to be either. Like it's a bit of a showboat style drummer.
Yeah, it's too complex for me. I certainly can respect it.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was definitely like I remember the first time I saw him was that they played on some talk show, like a late night talk show.
Oh yeah.
And he was like, "This is insane. How do they know what's going on?"
I know. Yeah.
It's like that thing that you said where it's just like so complicated. Almost seems like they're all playing something different, and like none of them has a plan.
I know, but there's
together.
There's such a good feeling to me in the trust that you put in them. It's like a bus driver or something.
Right.
It's like really snowy out, and you're just like, well, he knows what he's doing. I'm just gonna read my book or whatever. Yeah. And that's what I feel like listening to that kind of music, like anybody in that situation. So, and I've seen Pridgeon do this. So anyway, I was in San Francisco. It was really difficult to get a lesson with, or to just organize it because he's kind of turns out to be a bit of a flake. But anyway, did it. It was like
a flaky musician.
Yeah, it was really weird. It was like 9 a.m. we did it, and he was like not happy about.
Oh, really? Getting up that early, or just working that early?
Both, yeah.
Right.
And so we did it, and like I had this question of, I didn't even care if we touched drums. I just want to talk about like, how do you do this? What are you doing?
Okay.
Are you counting in your head?
Yeah.
I've heard like in jazz music, it's like you got to sing the part, you got to sing the melody, and you'll just have it. Is it counting? What is it? Like how the hell do you do it? And like how do you go so far? And what you're playing, your patterns are so far from lining up. I don't know. I just had so many questions, but I found that like he really wasn't able to like answer them the way I wanted. Like he basically just kept coming back to paradiddles. He's like, just learn your paradiddles, like every possible variation. Which I later realized, like I think that is how he does it.
Yeah.
Like he basically prepares for any possible situation with his limbs. Like so no matter where you are, your left hand is leading or whatever, like however you get turned around or whatever, like he's worked through every possibility for like hundreds of hours. So nothing freaks him out, and he just has the physical ability to play fast enough through all, like to just sort of power out of it. And like
that's how you do it. Like that's the technique thing, like as far as I know, but like that syncopation book, that's what it's totally based on. Is you learn every technical thing that I've ever come across is you learn every different version of whatever the thing is you're trying to do, so that whatever one you want in a particular moment you have available.
Okay,
because, I mean, you know as well as I do that if you are like, it can be really tricky to throw something different into a pattern that you're used to playing. Even if it's not that big of a change, if you're trying to do it on the fly, it can totally throw you off because you're locked into a series of movements.
Yeah.
So to me that makes sense in that way.
It makes sense. Yeah, it does make sense to me,
but you're still not really getting the concept behind it.
It wasn't the answer I wanted. Yeah. But I understand that that's how I think that's probably how he does it. And like you're saying, like that is the understood way it's done, but
well, I think probably too he was so young, like he's just been doing it for so long. You say he was professional at 7. It's like, how do you break, like something just becomes automatic in your brain, I would have to think, where like how do you don't ever need to break it down for yourself, so how do you do it for somebody else?
Yeah, so that's basically what it came down to, is like he's like he just doesn't understand why you can't do it. Because he's like, well, why couldn't you? Like, so I don't know. In the end, it was a weird experience. I wouldn't do it again with him, but it was definitely interesting to like to get in there with him for an hour and like play, and play a bit. And like he really put me through paces with the paradiddle. I mean, it was so early too. It's like I could barely play anything, and it was just like I don't know what he was trying to show me, this complicated paradiddle thing, in which I think I could play if I went in my room right now. But just at the time, it's like you're kind of nervous. And anyway, but then a couple days later,
that's a weird one too.
Yeah, so I didn't really get much from that lesson. Although to be fair, one lesson you're not really going to get much anyway. But but I went to Dave Elich a couple days later, and he was also a Mars Volta drummer, and that was incredible. That was like drum life changing.
Really?
Yeah, it was.
How so?
Well, he, I mean, as soon as we went in, like I was like, man, is it like, I don't even necessarily, because he sort of asked me, he's like, do you have anything set you want to work on or any questions for me or anything? And I was like, well, honestly, man, like I have so many questions. Like, I don't even know if I care to like drum. Like, can we just talk? And he's like, that is probably more useful. Like, he's like, you said you're a drummer on tour, like you're a professional. Mm-hmm. He's like, can be just as helpful. Like, I probably don't, you probably don't need me to show you how
I think so. And that's a funny thing that I've found as somebody who has taught drum lessons. I know myself that can be one of the most valuable things, because ultimately it's like what you're thinking about is going to dictate whatever you play. However, it's hard to let go of the idea that, well, we got to like, shouldn't we do some paradiddles?
Yeah.
Yeah. Shouldn't I like, where you got beats and fills, you know?
You wanted to learn that 311 song? Yeah. But yeah, we just ended up talking, and I learned a lot, and he did. And then right at the end, he was like, well, maybe we'll do a quick like technique check-in. And so I sort of played a couple things, and he sort of looked at my posture, and he's known for like the physical efficiency side of drumming.
Okay.
And so like that's one thing he really focuses on.
Yeah.
And he showed me a thing with my left hand, and at first I was like, oh, I don't know, this is hard. And honestly, my left hand, that was last spring, so almost about a year ago. And since then, with like pretty minimal practice, like my left hand is at least twice as good as it used to be.
Yeah.
Like it totally changed the way I use my left hand. Like, I mean, now it's just more like my right hand, which is what I wasn't noticing. But he pointed out a couple of things, gave me a little exercise, and it was amazing. But so
now, is it like my left hand sucks? Just in comparison to my right, for sure. Was it a physical thing that you're doing in terms of a way that you're holding your hand, or was it more of a like, do a bunch of this and you'll strengthen those muscles?
No, it was no muscle training stuff at all. It was it was like I was sort of holding the stick a bit like too tight. What I was trying to do, working on my left hand, I was just trying to muscle through it, like just with using like mostly wrist, just like try to get faster. Mm-hmm. But I was like gripping the stick a bit too hard and sort of at a too much of an angle to my arm, like sort of crossed.
So you weren't getting, like, it wasn't as efficient. You were probably doing something to sabotage the bounce.
Exactly. Yeah. So his big lesson was like get out of the way of the bounce, and like he showed me a really awkward feeling thing to do, which is not, you would never use it in playing, but like a wrist exercise to sort of just feel the bounce. Mm-hmm. And like he said many times, get out of its way.
Totally.
Yeah. And I heard on another drummer talk about that, where talking about like when you're playing basketball, when you're dribbling a ball, like you throw it down and just let it do its thing, and then it comes back up. You don't guide it down to like force it down to the floor and then pick it back up. So it's like
hold on to it and then like jump out of the floor and then
it's a different kind of dribbling. But anyway, so but it's all, and that's like, that's technique, but that does help like sort of in my journey to sort of unlock a more free playing, which is what I've been trying to do for like the last 5 years or something, like really just not worry about it so much, and like and just being able to play without being afraid of making a mistake or getting like fetched up or getting like getting, oh shit, I don't know how to get out of this role or whatever.
Right. Yeah. Okay.
But it does all come. I think it's a combination of like.
Well, because you can do that same, like you can also get in the way mentally.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. Because if you just don't worry about it, like I think, somebody like Pridgeon, like I use his name a lot, but it was like a notable lesson, like he what helps too is like an insane amount of confidence, like maybe bordering on like, well, anyway, a lot of confidence.
Sure, but I mean, you can say that about any musician too, and I do think it's, for better and for worse, we see it, but like just in order to get up in front of a big crowd of people, yeah, this is what I'm doing, and you guys all love it, like
well, that is an important part. I mean, but there are musicians like, I'm more on the side of like, oh, I don't want to be in anybody's way. Like I don't want to.
I am too.
Yeah, and I don't want to. Like these really flashy drummers, they're kind of like, here's what I'm playing, fucking get out of the way. Like this is what I'm playing. You better be with me. Where like
this is happening.
Yeah, but it's also like, and of course with all this practice, then you're not physically freaked out when you get to this thing and not sure how to get out of whatever. So you gotta have like the tools that you've just practiced and drilled over and over again. But you have to also have the mindset of like, it's cool. If I get into this, I'll know how to get out. Like just not worried about it. It's like, I do carpentry too. So I remember another carpenter told me once, like somebody who I worked with and like, I looked up to because he was really good and he's like, nothing really stressed him out. And he's like, I mean, I'm sure this saying applies to every profession, everything you can do, but I learned it in the context of carpentry was like the sign of, I don't know exactly how it goes, but the sign of a good carpenter is how he fixes his mistakes or something like that. So like in like drumming or something, it's like, or any music or whatever, any performance, like it's not that you can't make, like you're gonna make mistakes. But
you just, I've never.
But a lot of people don't even call them mistakes. Like, somebody who's worried about it, like, like myself, I might be like, oh, that was a mistake. But it's like, but other people would be like, it wasn't a mistake. That's just playing. Yeah, that's just playing music. Like
I know I've had it happen, and sometimes like I remember once I was recording, and I just like hit the rim instead of hitting the snare.
Yeah.
When I came back in after a break, it's like, oh, I screwed that. The take was going so well, except for this one thing. And then the other guys are like, no, that's cool. We want to keep that in there. So now that's just part of the song.
Yeah.
And it is a funny thing. People don't hear it as mistakes. We also, I think, and part of it's just, like getting on stage and feeling like everybody's watching you, staring at you, whatever.
Yeah.
It's easy to think that you're being judged a lot more harshly than you actually are.
Yeah. You know what? that is a super important lesson.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, somebody put it to me once because I play with a lot of singer-songwriters and stuff. So somebody put it to me once, like something like, nobody gives a shit about you. Actually, like they're not even noticing there's a drummer there.
No, they don't. In that context, definitely
as long as you don't ruin the song.
Yeah,
like it's fine. Like just stay back there, and that's I'm in that situation a lot. I was gonna mention like as far as this whole thing about like this like journey to freedom in playing and like jazz style improvisation and stuff. It's like I've also never been in a situation where it's appropriate to play like that, like live, like
right.
I've always been in like really sort of more rigid. Not that one's better or worse. It's just that's the situations that I'm playing in, like where you want to play it like the album.
It's not about having a flashy drummer.
Yeah, and it's also you don't want to like you can mess up the song more because it's like we're trying to do this like the album, and it's like pretty simple parts. So it's
okay, but even like with Ermine, you didn't.
Yeah.
Like, was it still? It was that structured and thought out.
Yeah. There was no
like you were playing parts as opposed to
there was no improv. It was like it was this you do this many times
because it was such kind of complicated music in some ways.
Yeah, but it's kind of easier to hide in there, like for the complicated music. You know, it's like, especially where we didn't improv. So it was like,
huh, that's interesting.
Yeah, it was also pretty rigid, but just because that's the way at the time, like that's what we wanted.
Yeah,
like we definitely didn't want to jam.
Right. So you wrote parts, and this is how it all fit together.
Yeah. Where now I do want to jam. You know, I mean, this is like 15 years later or something.
Sure.
So I do want to jam, but part of it is that like, playing music a long time, you sort of develop. Like I'm just way better at music and drums than I was.
Yeah.
Like I'm sure maybe if I try to go back and play some of those parts, I would get tripped up. But I'm a way better musician than I was then. So I feel like I could jam more effectively now. Like then it would be pretty like, kind of like shiny sharp edge jam. Like back then, you know, it'd be like, oh, let's try this crazy thing. Ding, 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 ding. I'm doing YYZ probably. Anyway,
the classic.
Yeah. But yeah, like I just feel like now, and all my peers, musicians too, like I would trust them more to like be more interesting jamming and stuff now too. Like I think we've all just as a group, as we've grown older, like are capable of making better music on the fly.
There's more stuff in there.
Yeah. So yeah, I want to do that. Like I want to be able to like really try. I mean, maybe I'm amazing at it. I don't know because I've never tried it really.
I think if you've never tried, you probably are. Like I think the best assumption to make is I've never done it, so I'm probably pretty good.
Yeah. I don't even think I need to bother trying. I just kind of nailed it. But yeah, I mean that's what's interesting to me is like, I mean I do include that like in the people that I play with, like I am able to like incorporate that a bit more here and there and have little tiny bits of weirdness in there. But it is still like fairly like structurally rigid music I'm playing a lot, that's like most music. That's like all pop music.
Sure,
and stuff.
Yeah. For most people, for most audience members, listeners, it's about the singer and it's about the words.
Yeah.
Then the music's there to dress it up, and you might notice if somebody particularly stands out. A lot of the time, that's because they took a solo and they were highlighted.
Yeah.
Or maybe you're paying close attention, or you've like learned to look for those things. But I think for most people, it's about the singer.
Yeah.
But I know myself when I play with other people, what I've sort of come to is like I figure out what needs to be there, what they're expecting, and then you kind of figure out what are the areas that you can do your own thing.
Yeah, exactly.
Because
sneak it in.
Yeah, because it's like I don't know if I'm playing with somebody and I'm like filling in for another drummer. Let's say I'm never gonna play exactly like this other person because everybody's got their own kind of go-to things and their own. Yeah. Everything's a little bit different. Yeah, but like certain stuff can change.
I know. I subbed for you.
Oh yeah, totally right.
And that was honestly one of the hardest fill-in gigs I've ever done.
That's so funny because I remember you saying that and I was like, oh, Michael, I have no problem. Like it'd be embarrassingly easy or something like.
And I thought that too. No, I was like super excited because I mean I loved that band but it was harder than I expected. Not because I thought it was going to be easy. Yeah.
But it's because of the idiosyncrasies of like I have a certain I found the same thing actually when I was learning your parts for the Paper Beat Scissors.
Oh yeah, right.
When Tim put that record out.
Yeah.
Like there's the one tune with the triplet groove that's like boom.
Boom. Honestly, my memory is so bad. I don't remember it.
Oh, it was cool. It was hard to play. Right. And I was like, how do you come up with this?
Yeah. I mean, it's also kind of embarrassing when it's your peers. So you're like, you don't want to ask them. I've had to do that recently. Well, when I was filling in for you, I remember your singer had to teach me one of the drum parts.
Oh, which was but he's a drummer too.
I know.
That's the thing about that band.
It's funny to say it like that.
Parts were, and this is kind of where I came up with my idea of what, because he plays the drums,
Yeah.
he had a very specific idea of how the beat should go in
Yeah,
a lot
yeah.
of songs. So it's like, so then you figure out, okay, what needs to be in here and like where, you know, which parts am I kind of like doing my own version. And the song evolves as you play it and it winds up being...
Yeah, it becomes your part.
Yeah,
but it
wherever it settles.
I had the same thing with John Epworth, like, because he's an amazing drummer.
Yeah, right.
And he would often, maybe like, you know, 50% of the time, he would have the drum part basically figured out.
Yeah.
And so for the first little while, like jamming the song, whatever, it would be just that, and then you'd slowly sneak things in or take things away or whatever.
Yeah, totally. You find out what is kind of clutter or what rhythm is maybe just a little bit awkward with the other thing that's going on. It's like a cool idea on its own.
Yeah, and the thing as the other instruments evolve too, it's like, well, this no longer works. So yeah, I'll change this or drop that or whatever.
Yeah, that's what wound up happening with our songs.
Yeah, I mean, those are great songs, but yeah, tough to learn. But
I found the same thing when I was filling in with Buttes, learning Joel's parts, because he is just such a, like, he plays in his own style, and the stuff that he plays is not the stuff that I would play.
Yeah, yeah.
And you can listen to it, and you're like, oh yeah, I can like wrap my head around what that sounds like, but then you go to actually play it, and like it feels awkward because it's not my go-to stuff.
Yeah. But I mean, it's fun though, because then you are being kind of forced to learn it this way. So maybe you'll take something away from that. Like, okay,
definitely, you're being forced to stretch.
Yeah,
and like, the fact that it's not stuff that you would have come up with is, it was kind of is what made it fun to do. Although some was still physically challenging. Like just like
like the yeah
like that.
I know.
I've only ever had to keep that up for short bursts in my life, and I've never gone out of my way to insert that into a song.
Yeah.
I'm not here to slag anybody who does, but he just like has a song where that's the whole end of the song.
Right.
For me, it was a challenge.
Yeah, I had I was recording with Mike Furostak in Montreal, and we were doing an album, and one of the songs was kind of like Can, like krautrock, boom boom pa boom 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 pa boom 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 pa boom boom boom.
The Motorek.
Yeah.
Or I'm
probably
mispronounced that.
So, and I was like, oh, this would be fun, because I was kind of listening to some krautrock at the time and stuff, and I was like, oh yeah, I'll do this beat. And I started doing it, and then like 30 seconds in, I was like, I can't keep it up. Like my bass drum foot, I've never had to keep up a bass drum pattern like this. And
it's tough because it's like that kind of thing where if you repeat a word over and over, then it starts to lose its meaning. Like, for me, it is the same thing where it's like,
am I even hitting the pedal right now?
Totally. You're like, I don't know if it's totally slipping off. Like physically, my leg could cramp up at any point. And
I thought it sounded terrible. But the only reason but this was me doing this to myself.
Yeah.
Like, but because the only reason I kept it up, I was joking because sometimes, like Jeremy Guerra in Arcade Fire, we sort of swap out drumming duties with Mike often.
Sure. Yeah.
So, that's a pretty notable drummer to have. Yeah. So I made a joke about like, oh geez, I wonder if Jeremy's going to be able to keep up with this. And Mike was like, well, that is actually kind of Jeremy's go-to thing. Like he'll nail that. And I was like, damn it. So I got to do this and like do it well.
Yeah. Now you've raised the bar for yourself.
Exactly. Yeah. And then when we recorded it was one take, and yeah, probably a minute in, I had it wasn't necessarily a cramp, but it just felt like jello. Like I felt like I had no control over my foot.
Yeah.
And I just sort of like let my mind go to a different realm, like a different plane of being. And I was like, by the end of it, it was like a 4 or 5 minute song. And it's basically constantly that beat.
Is that the Devil song?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
The Forgettable Truth.
Yeah.
Whatever album.
And at the end of the song, we stopped recording, and I was like, "Oh my god, I'm sorry, guys. Like that was, I can feel how terrible that was, and but I can't do it again. So I don't know what we're gonna do." And everybody's like, "Are you crazy? That was like perfect." And that was it. When I listen back to it, it sounds great. I can't believe I did that
song, and I would never.
I was just so stressed out. Like I went beyond what I was able to do because I knew it was costing money to be in the studio. So I'm like, I just got to do this.
It's weird too that your perception of what you have just done can be totally different, and it's entirely based on your level of comfort. I have found, because I've had shows where, and it's playing at festivals, you have a 15-minute changeover. I had some electronic stuff to set up, so I got to get there, swap out cymbals, swap out the snare, swap out the pedal.
Yeah.
I am taller than a lot of people, so I like my drum set up a little bit different. Yeah. Plus, I got this electronic stuff. You got 10 or 15 minutes for the last person to unload all of their stuff, and for you to get it. Plus, you're at the back of the stage. You got to get your gear past everyone else.
Everybody else is panicking to get this stuff set up.
Yeah, totally. And guitar players are like plugging their pedals or whatever. So if anything is not right, and often it's like a height thing. I remember playing Pop Montreal once, and just the stool I was sitting on, like, it was wobbly. And there's nothing you can do about that.
That's the worst.
Oh, I felt like we played the show, and I thought it was terrible.
Yeah.
And then stuff starts slipping, like the tom was like sliding away or something.
Well, I've never had that problem, actually.
Oh, man. It was...
You feel like it's a train wreck, so then
I thought it sucked. I thought the show sucked.
Yeah, so then in your mind, it's like, it's a train wreck.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty hard to, like, have fun when it's like that.
It is, but other people don't know.
Yeah.
Like, I remember talking to people afterwards, and they're like, "Oh, that was great." I was like, "Really? No, no, it wasn't."
Yeah. Well, I mean, it probably was. That's the thing, but I mean, that's part of.
Of course, it was.
Yeah. Who are you talking to here?
Yeah.
But that's part of, like, getting good or getting at least used to something, is like you just learn how to overcome these little problems or whatever, and just deliver, the performance or whatever.
Yeah, kind of. Like, and part of it too is you can rely on the fact that you've done it so much that, even if it feels bad to you, it's probably still happening at, like, appropriate, because I know it's happened different times too, where I'll, like, feel I've never liked a recording that I've done. I think with very few exceptions. When it's done, it's like you put all this. I don't know if you feel this way, but
absolutely,
yeah, right. You record it, and then all you can hear is how bad it is.
I just hear me, playing. But okay, so this is funny. I record quite a bit with Dan Ludwell, and one funny thing he likes to do to me is, I forget. Like, I have a really bad memory now with music. I get, or with everything maybe, but. It comes out of music because I can't remember song titles or anything like that, and I don't remember songs I've recorded on. So Dan is always, I will be in the studio, trying to track something, and he'll be like, "Oh no, maybe try it like the way you did it on that album." And I'm just like, did I record on that album? I have no idea what you're talking about.
What it was. No.
But he did to me one time, like, so he often play me examples in the headphones of, like, like an Al Green song or something, maybe more like this, and then I'll be, oh yeah, I got it, and then we'll like do the take. But a few sessions ago, he played something for me, and I was like, yeah, this is really cool. Like, who is this? And he's like, you don't recognize it? I'm like, no, man, but this is a really cool idea for this song. And everybody else in the control room is laughing. I'm like, what is going on here? And he's like, this is you on the last record you did. I'm like. Oh, so, but so for me, it's when I know it's me, I think I'm harder on it, because I just like, oh yeah, I could have done that better. That was a weird choice. But then, maybe this was just an exceptionally good song for me. But when I don't know it's me, I'm like, yeah, this is cool. This is good. Like, this sounds legit. Yeah. Like, I might have just lucked out with that one song, but it definitely worked, not knowing that it was me. So. Which is a pretty dangerous thing to have, actually, like, being so, like, oh, it's me, so it's probably not that good.
Oh, I know. Well, it's funny. I recently listened to the first two Glory Glory EPs, which I hadn't listened to in years.
Yeah.
But I signed us up with Sound Exchange, which I recently found out, and whatever all that stuff is, like. The stuff that you need to know that is just so hard to understand or care about as a musician. The stuff that makes your career possible. Yeah.
Is that like the royalty?
That royalty.
Yeah. It's not for the writers; it's for the performers. I think.
Something.
Yeah. It's like M-Rock.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. But you had to go through and listen? And
yeah, because I didn't know what this... I had to dig the CDs out because I couldn't remember what the songs were that were on each one. And I listened to it and I was like, oh man, this is pretty good.
Yeah, yeah.
It's like, but when they came out at the time, I was like, this is awful. We can't put this out. No, it's like you hear so much that's wrong with it. And even the things that are wrong with it, like, oh, it speeds up a little bit here, or, like it's a little bit draggy there.
Yeah, yeah.
Or like they're so picky.
Yeah.
Those little things. And you just are ignoring the entire thing. Like, number one, that stuff, I don't judge anybody else based on that stuff.
Yeah.
It's like, whatever, it's just a vibe.
That's what I was going to say, is like when you hear somebody else doing it, like you're like, oh yeah, no, that's kind of cool in that spot. Like you totally give people like way more credit than yourself, whatever, but...
And even like, I think there's like, even to the first EP, which is like got its share of awkward moments, but there's a certain like ramshackle charm, But it's like Exile on Main Street, like it's so
called
sloppy.
the album Ramshackle Charm.
Yeah.
That's got to be the name for the podcast.
Copyright, all rights reserved.
Ramshackle Charm.
That would play well on the East Coast, don't you think?
Yeah, yeah.
Even ECMA 2019.
Yeah. That's good. Yeah, especially for the music you're talking about, which is like was fairly complicated.
Oh yeah, like
ramshackle
prog
is not the first word.
Punk.
But some of the I meant to say before about like, when your drum set being set up weird or something like that can throw you off. Like it also depends on the specific scenario, because some of the most fun I've had playing drums is like I played in this punk band. And we'd play like, neighborhood basements. And this is not long ago. This is I mean, of course I did this when I was a teenager, but I did it again when I was like in my mid-late 30s.
Is that Tongue and Death Grip?
Yeah, Tongue and Death Grip. Yeah. And the drums would be, I would just use whatever's around.
Right.
Like if it's at a venue, whatever, like, oh, I think we got a couple drums. And I would just like use them. And they were falling apart.
Oh, beat to shit.
Yeah, and just like cymbals broken. Yeah. And it was some of the most fun and some of my best playing. Like, just totally free. Like, I just don't give a shit because these things are falling apart.
Yeah.
But if that was happening like during a show, like I played at Massey Hall, amazingly, I did. Yeah. And like if that was happening there, that would have sent me into like an anxious coma. Like, I would have crumpled up and like not been able to exist. But in that situation,
because you feel responsible for that, and it's a variable that you can't control. Like there's nothing you can do about it. You're gonna die. It's funny that, to me. We played. I think it was Glory Glory's last tour. We played a show in Hamilton, and the drum kit that I was using, somebody had written on the rack tom and Sharpie, "Die by the sword," and I just thought it was so funny. I took a picture of it.
Pretty hardcore.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
Die by the sword. So, but yes, you would die by the sword.
Yeah,
in that situation.
But but it was super fun, and like you had to be creative when it was happening at these punk shows in the basement, and I like played the shit out of it. I was just like on fire, but it's just because you shed the worry of like being perfect. You're just like, well, it's gonna be all messed up anyway.
Yeah, it's funny. That's like a liberating, like almost more fun thing in a way, because you're forced to be more creative. Yeah. And also to be more present in another way. Yeah. Like I played at Radstorm with Valerie, this band I'm playing with now. It's like a shoegaze band. Yeah. But we used the house kit, and they like no bottom head on the toms, solar cymbals, like
Phil Collins,
the floor tom,
Phil Collinsy.
Yeah, like kind of weird sounding, a lot wrong with it if you look at it in a certain way. Yeah. But in another way, you kind of find out what each of these things sound like. Yeah. You look for the sounds that you want to use, and then you just go.
Yeah, yeah. You play the instrument that's in front of you.
Absolutely,
yeah. No, that is cool. I mean, the only drums I have right now are what was it, a ramshackle...
A ramshackle charm, yeah.
They definitely have ramshackle charm. Like the tom I got for $30,
right?
The floor tom I got for $40. The bass drum's a bit nicer, but it's well, actually I love it. It's like an old Ludwig. But
where'd you get the toms?
I got the floor tom off Kijiji. It's like a Yamaha. I think it's birch maybe.
Okay.
like a 14-inch, and then.
Do you care about wood types? Do you pay attention to that with drums?
I think I do, but I'm not sure. Like if, you know.
I think my drums are birch, but they may be like white mahogany or something.
I know what the different woods are supposed to do to the sound, but I couldn't identify. I don't know, like, I'm more and more just, like, not caring about that stuff.
Yeah.
That's what I was getting at with this drum kit. Like, that's the only one I own right now. I'm, like, I got rid of this, like, amazing Ludwig kit.
Yeah.
Like,
were they the red Ludwigs?
Yeah, like this 1965. I sold those to a backline company, which is kind of cool because I can use them again, rent them. And, and then, like, I have my eye on something for down the road, but right now, like, I just have this, like, kind of garbagey kit, and it's like, I kind of don't care. Like, I'm like, you just play it the way it sounds good. So
yeah,
you know, you can, you know, it's kind of fun actually. Like, you're not. I mean, I wouldn't take it into a recording studio and record. Like, that's not that fun, unless it's a weird recording. Sure, but if it's like,
but it's not right because
it depends on the situation. But I'm not proud of it.
You're in there. Fun. You set up the mics. You spent half a day doing it. And then like.
Yeah.
This is what it sounds like, and we're just stuck with that.
Yeah. So maybe we'll fix that in post. Maybe replace that with MIDI. Yeah, I mean, I don't know, but the point is, like, I'm having fun playing them now, and like they're kind of my go-to touring kit too because I don't have to care about them.
Yeah,
so
you just chuck them in.
Yeah, and like, you know, if you're in a bigger venue or any venue really, it's like, you know, they're mic'd up, and it honestly doesn't matter that much as long as you can tune them decently and you have like decent heads and like. You know, it can sound terrible, sure, but
that's so much more important, though, the ability to make your instrument sound good, especially with heads and tuning.
Yeah,
and
that's the biggest thing. Like, it can be made of whatever. Like, the difference between a really well-tuned tom with good heads, that's a really cheap tom, and a well-tuned really expensive tom, I find is pretty small. The difference is there, but it's not like a total vibe killer for me.
I'm sure. Like, I've never A-B'd them.
Yeah.
But I have played nice kits that were tuned badly and they don't sound good.
Yeah, exactly. Like, it's way more to do with what you can do with them. Like, yeah, than what they are. Of course, it's nicer to have nicer stuff because it's a bit of a shortcut, like, to get to a nice sounding thing.
Yeah, it's easier, and the hardware's usually easier to work with.
Yeah, and it is a nicer sound. It sounds better, yes, it does, but the difference isn't that big. And for a live show, like, not many people are noticing that, like, oh, that sounds like a $200 tom, not a $800 tom. You know, it's like, as long as it sounds decent enough, like, it doesn't make that much of a difference. So, yeah, I'm not really worried about that. And, like, the different woods and stuff, it's like, I don't know.
I've not had enough experience with different drums.
Well, that's
to
the
know
thing.
The difference.
Yeah,
and like, I know what my drums sound like.
And, like, a lot of people can, like, talk, well, I tried these heads on this drum and this drum. It's like, where are you getting all this money for all these heads?
I know, it's $200 to reskin your kit.
I know. It's like, what do you mean you're experimenting with different heads? Like, just buy the ones at the store, and then that's it for, like, a year.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, you know, with, like, you know, I listen to a podcast with, like, drummers from the Modern Drummer magazine or whatever. And it's like, yeah, okay, they can, like, they get all this stuff sent to them.
Yeah, they get it for free.
Yeah, so they're reviewing all this stuff and, like, you know, differences between all the different depths of snare drum. It's like, I just have my snare drum. Like, I don't know if I can't really even consider, like, well, I should have one of these and one of these and one of these for the different situations. It'd be nice.
Yeah.
But it's like, I can also just make this one work.
I know. That's what I did, too. I have my one snare drum. Sounds good, like, tuned low. Sounds good, tuned high. And beyond that.
Yeah. My snare I paid $40 for, too. But it is a Ludwig Superphonic.
Yeah.
And the people didn't really know. It was a music store I bought it from. But it's painted insanely. Somebody...
It's orange, right?
Yeah, somebody painted. It was like it's like shiny automotive orange paint.
Yeah,
and it was a really bad paint job.
I always thought that you had done that.
No, I didn't do that. Thanks, man. I would have done it way better. No, that's just the way it was.
And I've never taken a close look at
it. Yeah. Right. And it's like the logo is partly painted over, which, like, for a purist is like, I mean, just to paint it at all
what are
is
you
the big
doing?
Yeah. But anyway, I just
mine's
never
a
really
super
cared.
too.
Yeah, and that's the thing with those drums. Like, I mean, it is lucky if your one drum is that, because it can do everything. But like, I also have like a more fun, like a Fibes clear acrylic snare drum.
Oh yeah.
And it's definitely got its own sound for a certain thing. Like, it's not warm. It's like more of a flat sort of crack, but which is perfect for like anything dancey, or
because it just cuts through.
Not like a brass snare,
or is
something.
it more like a thud kind of like?
It's more of just a flat, like a splat sort of with not as much tone. It's just like less tone.
Gotcha. So you just get the kind of attack sound.
Yeah, but it's not even like a real pingy hit like a brass snare or something. But anyway, it's super fun to have. I used it for a video shoot the other day where there's like a shine like lights through it and stuff.
That would be great for a video.
Yeah, it's perfect. Yeah. Although that's not at all the snare drum I played on the album, but whatever. It still looks cool and it's fun to play with. But yeah. I don't know. I don't really pay much attention to like what the drums are made of. But my next drum kit I think is going to be custom, so I have to think about that, and it's like kind of scary. I kind of wish they would just it would just be a drum kit to buy, because I don't have to think about it. And I don't have to make the choices that then later I'll be like, oh geez, I should have got this many plies or whatever. It's just like, when you've made those choices, it's harder to blame somebody else about the sound of your
definitely. And then when you've committed to like, these are my custom drums, so they like, there's this pressure on them to be the perfect thing.
I know. Yeah. You have no excuses.
Who are you getting those from?
Hopefully from YC Drums. He's in it's a small company in Ontario. He did drums for like Lowell Campbell from Winter Sleep.
Oh yeah, cool.
I think the big endorsee is like the guy from the Arkells. Anyway, so like that sort of level of drummer, and anyway, he's building kits. I think he only does custom kits or whatever. So I was able to borrow. He lent me a drum kit to do a little tour with, and they are amazing. Like, holy man, like. So it does make a difference. It does make a difference, but
sure, of course,
to have like super nice drums.
Yeah, nice or anything.
Yeah, but then I went back to my crappy ones and was like, yeah, this is also fine for now.
Yeah, they're all right.
Yeah.
Neat, interesting.
There's no tea left, is there?
No, there's no tea left.
No,
we should. I'm gonna like pause this anyway.
Yeah.
All right. Not bad, right? I'd like to thank Michael Belyea for appearing on the show. I would like to thank you for listening. I'd like to thank me for putting this together for free for you to enjoy on the internet, on your smartphone, or wherever you get your podcasts. Maybe it's a desktop. Maybe it's a laptop. They're not called laptop computers anymore, folks. They're called notebooks. As always, show notes, I'll dig up some stuff and I will put it on my website, learndrums.ca. It'll be /hitmakers, but if you just go to the main page, there will be a big kind of splash page with Mike's picture on it. That's all you need to know. If you can find a webpage on the internet, you can find this information. You can follow me on Instagram at learndrums. If you want to support the show, you can tell your friends, you can leave us a rating or a review. That stuff apparently really helps podcasts. I'm not great at kind of figuring out that angle of like really hyping the show up to be the biggest it can be. I just hope you like it. What else can I hard sell you? You go stream my old band Glory Glory on Spotify or your favorite streaming platforms. You buy our stuff on Bandcamp. I've got an album under the moniker Beach Chair on a Bandcamp page as well. All that stuff is linked from my website. You even buy Glory Glory merch. Actually, you should buy some of the records and CDs and a couple t-shirts I have sitting in a box in my closet. But that's a different discussion for a different day. Thanks for being here. Talk to you next week. Bye-bye. So a lot of people have asked me in my real life what the goal is or what the point of the podcast is. And I'll tell you that when I started doing this, my goal was not really clear, but the way that I got into it was I had been unemployed and had previously worked as a drum teacher. And for somebody with my background, that is one of, it's about the only job you can do that will pay you well consistently. I'm not qualified to do much else that pays me well. So I was trying to wrestle students out of my house, and I had gotten a few, but sometimes people would be flaky or stuff would come up. I didn't really have a policy, and let's say 3 people cancel in a given week. That's a pretty decent chunk of your income that just disappears. And I didn't have a way to make them pay. I didn't want to scare them off. So what I thought I would do to try and diversify is get into doing online drum lessons, be one of those guys. When I discovered that I needed an audience in order to do that, then I thought, well, maybe I'll make a YouTube channel. And then I, after kind of considering that, realized I didn't have a camera or really video skills or any idea what I was doing with video, but I do know how to record audio, so why not a podcast?